Think back to when you were in school. Sitting in that bright classroom, the fluorescent lights flickering and humming, your textbook in front of you and a blank piece of paper on your desk. You need answers. And lucky for you, all you gotta do to get them is flip to the back of the book. They're all listed, categorized, and ripe for copying. Sure, they're supposed to be there for checking your work, but what's the harm in just taking a quick peek and acing the class? If you get good grades, you'll be successful in life, right? Wrong. Welcome to Alux.
Class is easy.
Traditional education systems leave most people at a bit of a disadvantage in life. That's not to say there's no value whatsoever. Obviously, education is paramount to growth and success. But one integral part is missing: learning to think for yourself. Consider this. In our families of origin, we're conditioned to think, believe, and behave in certain ways. When we go to school, we add on some new beliefs and behaviors, but largely someone else is influencing our thoughts and actions. And that can be comforting in some ways. You don't have to do any of the heavy lifting yourself and can just adopt whatever belief structures are around you. These people seem to have a good handle on how the world works and how to live within it, so it feels safer to think and do the same as these authority figures in your life. After all, the desire to fit in and belong is hardwired into our DNA. Conformity in community is partially what got us this far as the human race. And this conformity works fine when you're a kid learning the ropes of life. But when children from this environment become adults, well, sometimes nothing changes. And when that trend continues long enough, not only is the greater population at a loss for critical thought, but so are educators. We fall into a trap of wanting to be given the answers. We want to flip to the back of the book and copy them out. We want study guides, life hacks, and how-to listicles. But that's not real life and should never be the end goal for knowledge. The key is to search for information, not advice. Though considering humanity has a long and rich history of deep and critical thinkers, how did we get here? Well, critical thinking is extremely hard to teach. In fact, some would argue that it can't be taught at all, and while we disagree with that thought, we do agree it's hella hard to teach students to think critically for themselves. According to a Cambridge University study that surveyed 1,000 educators globally, 93% of teachers agree these skills are absolutely necessary to navigate today's world, but only 21% actually think their students have what's needed to develop them before entering post-secondary. And this isn't purely intellectual. Developing strong critical thought means you not only have a firm understanding of your beliefs and knowledge base, but, and this is where it gets kinda tricky, you're also open and willing to accept information that goes against your knowledge and belief structure to make changes as needed. This isn't easy though, especially for folks lacking emotional intelligence, as you can easily discover with a little reading on something called confirmation bias. By definition, confirmation bias is the human tendency to search for, favor, and interpret data in a way that reinforces previously held beliefs or values, and this happens a lot. You see it in the way many people try to back up their claims about all kinds of nonsense, from Pizzagate to the plandemic. But one of the more fascinating aspects of confirmation bias is what actually happens to our brains when the information we hold as true gets called into question. It triggers the amygdala, our fear center, and fear, Aluxer, is one hell of a drug. For some, challenging a closely held belief is akin to waging a personal attack against them. Their amygdala responds by creating intense feelings of anger or even aggression. Our brains are designed to protect us, and this perceived threat elicits a fight-or-flight response. That's why calling out your racist uncle at Thanksgiving resulted in such an extreme reaction. On a primal level, he felt threatened by your words. Our most strongly held beliefs, in a way, become interwoven with our identity, which is why it feels so personal, why our brains are so quick to assume it's a personal attack. Understanding how this process works is one key step to refining critical thinking skills. They can't be developed if you allow your brain to be tricked into thinking it's under threat because of contradictory information. Once you work through and understand this hurdle, the doors to true critical thought can be unlocked. But keep in mind what we told you earlier. It's about searching for information, not advice. What we mean by this is seek out undiluted and uninterpreted facts and form your own thoughts and opinions on the topic. One of the many downfalls of our instant gratification society is we want things now, including understanding. But understanding isn't always something that comes easy or fast, nor should it. Most complex topics, like the ones oversimplified and misinterpreted online, require a comprehensive approach. It's not good enough to read a couple of articles, watch a YouTube video, and claim to be an expert because you've done your research. Because if that's all you did before making such a bold statement, you've literally done nothing of the sort. Research is a carefully detailed and systematic approach to studying a specific problem, issue, or concern, and then applying the scientific method to form conclusions. It takes months or even years to do this properly, so it's time to skip the pretend research and instead do your homework. Thankfully, this time it has nothing to do with trigonometry, unless of course you want to better understand triangles. No, doing your homework is about getting closely acquainted with the flow of information, how to find it, what sources can be trusted, and how to connect the dots. One of the major issues sabotaging people in this space is the overabundance of information we have access to, for better and for worse. I mean, it's not like schools in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s were teaching students how to spot a trustworthy source online. There hardly even was an online. But being able to do this in the moment will help you to level up your critical thinking skills and avoid falling into the paradox of choice. When the number of options available to us increases, it becomes more and more difficult to discern what is best, true, most accurate. You get the picture. So when one Google search yields thousands of articles, how can you figure out which ones carry the most weight? Well, you can start off with the basics. View everything with a hint of skepticism. Approaching topics with the motivation of, is this even true? Automatically sets you up to think more critically as your brain starts to search for red flags in the content. Things like stating opinions and feelings as fact or speaking in definitive terms are usually the first ones you'll notice. Sources are not one size fits all and simply can't be treated as if they're the same. Opinion columns are not as trustworthy as academic journals. That's a fact. Confusing feelings with facts is what trips a lot of people up and gets them stuck in cycles of misinformation, which is why it's vital to always consider who created the content. Search for information on who they are, where they studied, what kinds of credentials they have, who they're affiliated with, and perhaps most importantly, who is giving them money. Examine the sources they cite in their content and do some follow-up searches to determine if there are any specific motivations or agendas at play. Are their sources credible? Do they even have sources? If questions come to your mind while doing your homework, branch off and search for those answers too. As we said, thinking critically requires a comprehensive approach, one that explores all angles of a topic before coming to a conclusion. It's easy to be manipulated online, and creating a sort of due diligence checklist for critical thinking will allow you to better navigate the news and finally think for yourself. Your critical thought is like a muscle that you can grow and flex. The more you exercise it, the stronger it is, the more naturally it comes to you. Being able to think for yourself is another one of those superpowers, Aluxer. Is it in your arsenal? We hope you enjoyed this video today, Aluxers, and gained some value with us. Are there blind spots in your critical thinking? What's something that had you fooled because you didn't have a due diligence checklist to reference? Enrich our community by joining the conversation in the comments. And as always, you know that for sticking with us until the very end, we've saved a bonus for you. The paradox of choice certainly doesn't only apply to critical thought. In his book bearing the same name, Barry Schwartz discusses many facets of why an abundance of choice is actually not the best thing for us when it comes to happiness, which, as you might be feeling, elicits an emotional reaction from many. What do you mean fewer choices is better? More is better, right? Well, that's debatable and definitely something for you to consider in your quest for true critical thought. Go to Alux.com/freebook to get yourself the audiobook version for free thanks to our friends at Audible. Have a listen, spend some time thinking, and make up your own mind about it. It'll be great practice.